On January the 13th, 2025, the loins of Sims 3 PC fans were set a-frothing when something unbelievably unexpected happened. The game got its first update in, from what I can tell, just over 9 years. This turned out to be a very minor tuning to patch 69 of the game, but a very significant one as it fixed the Alder Lake issue, which meant that The Sims 3 couldn't run on some newer end machines and processors. Until then, Lazy Duchess's Alder Lake mod was required to fix this. Considering how The Sims 3 store page, which is where you can buy additional CAS, build, buy, and gameplay assets for the game, hasn't been updated from about December of 2016, The Sims 3 felt quite dead, at least in the eyes of EA. So with this revelation, along with the fact that The Sims 4 has now been cracking on for about 11 years, I thought it was time to do a cheeky little comparison video of the gameplay between The Sims 3 and The Sims 4. But before we get into it, my name is Yasmin and my mission here on my channel is to help serious simmers like you to find fun and fulfilling gameplay in your favourite life sim games, whether that be Sims 3, Sims 4 or something else. My question of the day is, which game do you think is best? Sims 3, Sims 4? Let us know in the comments down below. As a few quick notes, this, as I mentioned, is just going to be a gameplay comparison between The Sims 3 and 4, just because I am a live mode girly through and through, and that is where I feel most qualified to talk about, I suppose. This video is also going to be a partial remaster of one that I made about 4 or 5 years ago. I wouldn't recommend going to watch it because I sound like a tiny little mouse who is definitely not trying to hide her hobby from her judgmental flatmates. As with that video, what we talk about here today are my subjective opinions. I am not trying to yuck anybody's yum. The Sims 3 was my introduction to this franchise, but as a lot of you newer folks will know here in our community, I have absolutely fallen head over heels with my Sims 4 Forever World, which we started this year. And it really has rekindled my love and appreciation for this game. So going back and looking over my old script from a good few years ago now has been really interesting to see where my thoughts and opinions have stayed the same and definitely changed in some areas. I love both games very dearly, but you guys know how we roll here. Productive criticism rules this here queendom. And lastly, feel free to chuck this video on in the background. It's going to be very meandering, it's going to be very chatty, very incredibly yappy in fact. The editing isn't going to be anything super special, I just have lots of ideas and I want to talk about them with you guys. So whether you're falling asleep, whether you're doing your washing up, stick us on in the background, and without further ado, let's get into it. So let's start off with what happens when you first boot up a new game. On the surface, the processes look the same, but there is one significant difference. While The Sims 4 yeets you straight into Create a Sim with the expectation that you'll make your own original character or find one from the gallery, The Sims 3 brings you out the map screen and gives you the choice of making your own fresh sim, snagging a pre-made one from the bin and plopping them into a new home, or playing with any of the pre-existing families that already live in the town. Right off the bat, I think that this sets up really different expectations for how the games view their respective worlds and your place in it as a player. In The Sims 4, I've always, and even after starting my Forever World, still do feel like the world revolves around you and your active Sims. Like there was a big bang moment that sprouted out all of the worlds and Sims in the second that you hit confirm on your first Sim. Whereas in The Sims 3, even if you plop out fresh out of the womb, a fully grown adult into Sunset Valley, to me, it feels like the town has been there and existed before you arrived in town. The second you press play in live mode on Sunday at 8 AM or whatever day you start the game, I can never remember, townies will begin going about their business, head into the park with their family, or to the supermarket, or to work, or to the library, or the bar. Most of the time, you have no idea about it, but it does help the world to feel more alive. You pass these Sims in their travels. This was actually a huge reason why I wanted to make my Sims 4 Forever World, because I wanted to create a save file that through gameplay was filled with Sims that felt more real, because I had given them some semblance of life to play out in the background while I was adding new characters. In The Sims 4, the world is there as your toy box, your dollhouse. I used to really see this as an insult to the game back in the day, as a fundamental flaw. But now I do appreciate how there are some benefits to it. If you enjoy rotational play, as in switching between multiple households like I do in my Forever World, The Sims 4 is the game to do it in. As it's made so much easier by settings which allow you to enable aging for just your active household, and to halt story progression via the neighborhood stories settings. With The Sims 3, on the other hand, your sim will move on if you aren't playing them, just as the rest of the world does. In a way, this does make time feel more real in The Sims 3. Not even the player, who is the god stand-in, has total power to stop its impact on those outside of your immediate grip. So there are definitely swings and roundabouts to how the world is organised and how much control you have over it in both games. Which one you prefer will change depending on your preferred playstyle. I guess nowadays, I play both games very differently, sticking to one singular Legacy Challenge style household in The Sims 3, and a rotational Forever World with multiple houses in The Sims 4. And I guess we should also talk about the open and closed world of it all here. So, with the worlds, the most obvious difference between the two games is the fact that in The Sims 3, you have open worlds, and in The Sims 4, you do not. In my opinion, the open nature of The Sims 3 was one of its biggest strengths in general, and conversely, the closed nature of The Sims 4 is one of its biggest drawbacks. Again, The Sims 3's open world lets you see your neighbours in action. Having your sim grind at some painting and you get bored, zoom over to the park and see what's happening over there. Ooh, look, your mate's having a picnic. That's nice, maybe we'll pay them a visit later. With The Sims 4, seeing other Sims visiting different lots doesn't seem to have quite as much rhyme or reason to it, other than your game needs to populate some people for you to talk to, so they plop in some random folk you might know or who you might not know. I'm not a coder, by the way, so if there is some more sophisticated logic to it, I really would love to know. I have noticed though that in my Forever World, I do see some of my non-active played households popping up about the gaff more often, which is nice. While I have really forced myself to get better at visiting other lots this year, what with playing the game more on stream and in long plays with you guys, and I just want to make my, visuals a little bit more interesting for you guys, it is something that I hardly ever used to do, which is, visiting other lots, because of the fact that you have to go through loading screens. So still today though, I have to always leave my Sims home lot with purpose, like I'm going to an active day at work in a career, I'm visiting family, or I'm heading to a festival. I hardly ever just find myself leaving the house to explore somewhere new. Again, while I'm trying to battle my perfectionist tendencies in The Sims 4, as I've made a video about recently, and the drive to have all of my Sims efficiently beaving away on money making and skill leveling is really strong, that gets so tough to do when you want to leave the house with just one Sim. You can't have one Sim at home gardening, for example, and another one going to the gym. I know that you do have that little icon that you can select, which very generally says what your Sims should do when you leave them alone, but I find that this doesn't work half the time. But I of course don't have this issue in The Sims 3, and in fact I have my Sims leave their home all the time because I have that freedom. One negative moodlet that you can get in The Sims 3 is stir crazy if you stay on your home lot for too long, and I can't help but wonder if this was introduced into The Sims 4, whether it would encourage me to leave my home lot more, or if they've maybe conspiratorially not added it to the game because they know that a lot of players don't want to be pushed to go through a loading screen. It's not all bad for The Sims 4, however, as I know that some players like the relief which comes with getting to only control one Sim or a small handful of your household at a time when you can evenly split them across different lots. I do appreciate how the closed world system allows you to move to any worlds that you have in your game easily, and that all of these worlds coexist together, even if it is a little bit unrealistic that a loading screen can whisk you away from a blistering hot desert to a snowy mountain in about 20 seconds. This system does allow you to control multiple households in one save file really easily though, which I enjoy. This is the core of how my Sims 4 Forever World works, and again, in the last year in particular, I have come to appreciate this system and the ease and control that you have between switching between different households so much. Like, I can't really put into words how much leaning into this system has completely changed how I play and enjoy the game. Doing this in The Sims 3 doesn't feel so easy. It feels like your Sims really will move on, as I mentioned earlier, which when you want to play out the stories of lots of Sims all at once, it really isn't the best for. However, one does have to question if more options really is the quote-unquote better choice. The early worlds in The Sims 4 for me are the strongest. I'm thinking Foundry Cove in Willow Creek, my beloved, you guys know, basically all of Windenburg, etc. The size of neighborhoods felt justified. There wasn't too much fluff and extra space. If you wander into a random corner, you'll be rewarded with a little collectible to grab, a new fishing spot, or just something. Henford-on-Bagley is another great world, but the ones that have released more recently are just so much fluff. Take Chestnut Ridge from Horse Ranch, for example. I get that they had to make the areas bigger for horses to be able to traverse and to justify horses as a new mode of travel. But these worlds are absolutely empty, these neighborhoods, I mean. The town area is so dull, and I wish that there was more to find. More buildings to stick your head into, and the like. Even if they were just rabbit holes, I wouldn't mind. I find the liberal use of set dressing to be a cruel prank a lot of the time. You think there's a new neighbor to go check in on, only to zoom over and find that it's a shell. Whereas with The Sims 3, see a building and there's a very good chance that you can go inside it or at least interact with it in some way. It's always a joy returning to The Sims 3 and getting to experience that freedom of a large open world again. In the same vein, if you enjoy similar gameplay styles to me, especially the rags to riches style, The Sims 3 does a far better job at letting you feel like you're really living off the land. When I kick off a new rags to riches challenge in The Sims 3, it's so much fun plopping down my own new lot away from the other houses because yes, The Sims 3 does in fact have a world editor, then running around the entire map scouring for collectibles, which feels so much more integrated into the landscape, and don't worry, for all of my collectible girlies, we will be talking more about that later. The worlds feel like they're crafted with intention, as you, the player, feel rewarded for daring to click and check out something new. Even the more set dressing-y elements have lore built into them, which leaves you with more questions. Why are there dinosaur bones here in the middle of town? Who the heck was this random sim that's just died right here? And on another note, the open world does allow for the joyous small details of The Sims 3 to emerge, like how the kids get the school bus and you can follow it to the lot, then they get dropped off by the bus again in the afternoon, or getting to watch a sim in labour bike their way to the hospital to give birth. This does make having to choose a world to play in tougher if you own quite a few of them like I do. Monte Vista is always my go-to, as I love the Italian Florence vibes so much. But what if I want to do a rags to riches challenge where I start as a really sleazy guy that robs cars outside of the grimiest club in Bridgeport? Or if I want to play through Bella and Mortimer's story in Sunset Valley? The list of possibilities feels endless. And on this note, The Sims 3 worlds, they just feel so immersive. This might be coming from a space of pure nostalgia, but Moonlight Falls, which came with Supernatural expansion, has to be one of my favourite worlds, even still to this day. Even though a lot of people say that it is one of the blandest ones to be added, the mysterious small town-ness is just so vivacious is the best word that I can say for it. And I'm a sucker for a Twilight reference as well. It's always felt really cozy to me and like it's filled with secrets that I want to uncover. And I've never connected anywhere near as much to a world in The Sims 4 without me having made made my own mark on it in the first place. However, with all of that said, in The Sims 4, I guess I can chase all of my desired gameplay directions in one save file and have all of these Sims interact. So again, there are so many swings and roundabouts. Do you pick one really detailed world, or being able to play in a bunch of different worlds that maybe are a little bit shallower? I find that I have had the most fun, again, playing in my Sims 4 Forever world this year. Here I play with so many different households, all in one save file, and they're all connected, so in me putting my own stamp on the world, it's made much richer. I guess that another motivation for me wanting to create a forever world in The Sims 4 was to find a way to compensate for how empty Sims 4 worlds really feel in terms of the pre-made Sims in them, who feel as dry and dusty as that last digestive biscuit that you left in the packet 2 years ago because you thought that you'd really appreciate it being there one day. Yes, some households and their homes have had refreshes throughout the years, including the Goths in 2022 and the Calientes in 2023, I think, but then the devs kind of stopped doing that, and this felt exclusively visual. On booting up a new save file in The Sims 4, household bios might indicate that there's a lot of lore around a certain household. For example, they might have a feud with another family, but then you head into that household only to find that they have absolutely no relationship with the other people mentioned in the bio. The BFF household, who apparently have a simmering romantic feud brewing, is a particular culprit, along with the Landgrabs and Johnny Zest. It's pretty disappointing because the lore between families in The Sims 3, on the other hand, runs so much deeper than just the household description. In fact, earlier this year, I made a whole iceberg looking at the lore from across the whole Sims franchise, and Sims 3 features a hell of a lot on it. But for example, the Sim Agnes Crumplebottom has a pretty deep backstory. The ghost of her dead husband haunts her house, allowing players to resurrect him if they so choose, and beyond that, her house has a somewhat unsettling, half-complete nursery, leaving players to decide for themselves what happened and what's next for Agnes's story. So then there's how Sims feel when you actually play them rather than just spot them out and about town. This is primarily dictated by traits. The Sims 3 has a wealth of traits to choose from, which allow you to create diverse Sims who feel different. In the base game, The Sims 3 had 63 traits, of which your Sim could have 5. After all the DLC, The Sims 3 offers 99 total traits. But in comparison, The Sims 4, with all of its multitudinous DLC, includes 81 traits for adults, I believe. These are traits that you can add to your characters in CAS, and I'm not including ones for, child Sims and the like. But The Sims 4 only allows you to have 3 of these traits on an adult Sim, with an extra trait being dictated by the category of aspiration you select. More traits can also be unlocked during gameplay in both games, but I found that in more recent Sims 4 DLC, basically, I would say throughout the past 5 years, this has been an aspect which has been severely and highly inconsistently neglected. Overall, I find that traits in The Sims 4 don't do all that much to separate each Sim and to make them feel individual. That is, unless you give them very overt personality traits like evil or high maintenance from the Spa Day pack or macabre from the Life and Death expansion, which has them, posing a little bit differently and gives more noticeable, unique moodlets. For me, in my own gameplay, the process of having a Sim stand out mainly comes from my perception of that Sim and the experience that I've had with them. Again, for Sims with those more overt traits, how their autonomous actions shine through may be caused by traits, but a lot of drama is also just caused by Sims acting under the influence of other factors like neighborhood action plans, or perhaps family dynamics, or lot traits, or something else entirely. Especially in my Forever world, we have some super silly, iconic moments, many of which have potentially occurred due to bugs or the game just being silly, that have made me so attached to my Forever world Sims, and I think that a huge part of that has also of course come from getting to share those moments with you guys on stream. One of the biggest selling points of The Sims 4 though was the emotion system. A Sim's emotion is massively impacted by their traits. I would personally absolutely not miss this one bit if they did away with this in... Oh, wait, in my old script, I'd written The Sims 5, and now I'm a little bit sad, but anyway. In a way, it did feel like the Sims team only somewhat committed to the emotions system, as in my opinion, emotions are far too easy to manipulate. The negative emotions are far too easy to circumvent, and it almost makes me feel like my Sims are a little bit fickle sometimes, which just honestly adds to the silliness, which again, I have been trying to embrace. But again, you just got the news that your dad, who was your best friend, passed away. No problem, cry it out in bed for a few hours or take a happy potion, and you'll have forgotten all about this tremendous loss in your life. If you need to be in a certain emotion to gain skill boosts, chances are that you can buy a lamp or a potion, or once you've been in the mood once, you can paint an emotional painting to capture it forever and have a constant emitter of that emotional aura. It's far too easy. But knowing me, I'd also complain if the emotion system were too difficult to influence, so there we go. Okay, so it's time to get into the actual game. Between both games, the day-to-day gameplay is pretty much the same. You manage the needs of your Sims while they go to work or find other ways to make money, while they build up relationships and gradually make a life for themselves. Aspirations in The Sims 4, or lifetime wishes in The Sims 3, may be what you focus a lot of your gameplay on once you are in live mode. They differ quite a lot between the two games. Functionally, in The Sims 4, most aspirations are broken into tiers, with tasks in each tier gradually increasing in difficulty. You'll get a reward trait after completing an aspiration and are encouraged to choose a new one after you've completed your old one. In The Sims 3, you select one lifetime wish, which will have one or a few pretty lofty goals to hit. Many people have criticised aspirations added through DLC in The Sims 4 as being like tutorials for new gameplay features, and I would definitely agree with this to an extent. I think the city living one is a prime example of this. I'm not trying to excuse it, but I think that it could be attributed to the structure of Sims 4 aspirations and the lack of content which some packs come with. Let me explain here. The Sims 4 tier system forces the need to cast a wider net of the goals to be achieved, which means that 4 packs which are a little bit lacking in content or are kind of difficult to quantify in terms of completing one singular action or goal, most aspects of said pack will most likely be hit within an aspiration. Notably, some aspirations added with more recent updates in DLC have started deviating from this structure. For example, the Werewolves game pack had you start with just one wolf-related aspiration. You then have to complete this to open up 4 other choices, and I believe that all of these options only had one tier to them. The new aspirations which came with the Spa Day refresh also only had one tier, and I'm sure that there are more of them, but I'm forgetting now. So I'm in two minds about this shakeup. First, it irks me that there is a lack of consistency between the structure and quality of aspirations, not to mention that some packs feel like they had forgot to add aspirations to them altogether, and the fact that the categorizing of aspirations also seems so confused, but also variety is the spice of life, I guess. The nature of lifetime wishes in The Sims 3, on the other hand, means that only one or a few utmost goals can be hit within a single lifetime wish, making them much more narrow in focus but with a larger goal to achieve all at once, rather than achieving these mini goals in stages across aspiration tiers in The Sims 4. Lifetime wishes, which came with The Sims 3 DLC especially, were quite unique for the most part. For example, one that came with the Pets expansion involved having you collect 2 of nearly every type of animal that you could have as a pet in the game, as though you were building a pixelated Noah's Ark. You do of course still get some of the more standard hit the top of this career or master this skill ones, but I think in The Sims 3 they had a good mix of standard lifetime wishes and some more fun ones, like see the ghost of a wealthy spouse or create 3 monsters, which was one that came with the Ambitions pack, I believe. I think that in The Sims 3, completing a lifetime wish felt pretty significant, like it actually held some weight in a Sim's life. I'm not sure why I don't quite completely get that feeling in The Sims 4. Again, maybe it's because of the tier structure of the Aspirations system, which has you incrementally achieving pretty similar goals to those in The Sims 3, rather than having one big hurrah at the end after completing one singular goal, if that makes sense. I do want to point out here that I don't actually dislike the aspiration system implemented in most of The Sims 4, especially when I started playing that game when it first came out. It was nice to have these smaller goals to hit as you were getting started with your first few households and you were kind of wanting to be shown around the game a bit more. And when you're a more experienced player, some of those top tier goals in summer aspirations do still pose a challenge to me today. Overall, if I had to pick a system which I favoured between the two games, I don't know if I'd be able to. I don't know, the feelings of satisfaction that I get from either system is just different. I guess the consistent application of the system in The Sims 3 does give it some bonus points, if I'm being pernickety though. A big focus of a lot of aspirations/lifetime wishes, as well as careers, which we'll get to later, is skill building. It feels a bit mental to say, but in the Sims 4 base game, and with all of the DLC which is currently available, there are over 50 skills in total. And again, I'm talking about just the adult sim ones, rather ones for kids, toddlers, animals, etc. Whereas in The Sims 3, again, after all its DLC, there are only 28. On the surface, more may equal better, giving a little bit of a boost to The Sims 4's case. Of course, not every player will have all the DLC, and skills here are divided into major and minor skills, with the former going up to 10 levels and the latter going up to just 5. I think that the vampire lore skill does go up to 15 for some reason. I'm probably also missing some examples which you guys can fill us in on below. So there's a lot of variation here. There are certain skills that you'll encounter a lot in the game, like charisma, fitness, and parenting if you have the parenthood pack, and there are some which are highly specific to certain areas of gameplay, so much so that you'll forget that they exist sometimes, like the Salvadoranian culture skill. I'll talk way more about this later in the DLC section of this video, but some skills, to me, kind of start to step on the toes of one another, like juice fizzing from Eco Lifestyle and nectar making from Horse Ranch. Again, not every player will have both packs, but to me, juice fizzing has kind of become obsolete as a method of making money because the sale prices for the end products are just so low as far as I can remember. So why would I bother doing it when I know that a very similar skill, nectar making, will make me more money? One thing on the variety of skills in The Sims 4 though is that I guess that it does give you more scope for, you know, hobbies for your Sims to have, as despite my capitalist slag soul, not everything is about making money in these games. But skills in The Sims 4, for the most part, do feel very linear. Once you've done it once, you've experienced all that there is to see for that skill. One way in which the skill system in The Sims 3 varied was the addition of the skill journal. This included additional skill-based challenges which Sims could complete to get rewards. For example, being able to complete paintings quicker, of course in relation to the painting skill. Another one of my favourites is how, with the sculpting skill from Ambitions, ice sculptures would start to melt over time unless you completed the skill journal challenge, which unlocked the ability for them to stay frozen. This was so amazing because you could create ice busts and kind of like full-size sculptures of your Sims, which if you wanted to track your family kind of visually throughout a legacy challenge, for example, having a sim that had this perk unlocked was so amazing for being able to do this. And because some of the tasks in the skill journal took ages to unlock, this encouraged you to try chasing different ones with different skills, which added this level of replayability to skills in The Sims 3, which made them feel so much deeper. I think that The Sims 4 could really benefit from a feature like this too, just to give players more things to do and to encourage them to more deeply explore skills that the game has to offer. But on the flip side, I guess the tiered aspiration system subs in for this to an extent. As with real life, obviously, a huge part of gameplay between The Sims 3 and 4 involves working in some way to earn those sweet, sweet simoleons. Careers, I think, are done decently well in The Sims 4, which is funny that I say this because I adore Rags to Riches gameplay where you work to build up an income without a traditional job. It's fun that you can unlock new items as you progress up career ladders, and I love the addition of active careers with dedicated daily goals to complete. Even though active careers were added with The Sims 3 Ambitions and also Showtime, they can be a little bit hit and miss for me. The architect and stylist careers left you scratching your head oftentimes, but the firefighter, ghost hunter and private investigator ones were always fun to revisit. But having to get the different medal goals to hit and having that influence your daily pay in The Sims 4 is also fun. Get to Work has always been one of my favourite packs because of the active careers. I recently got to the top of the scientist career with Cassandra Goth and made it to Planet 6am for the first time, which is really exciting considering how many years I've had the pack. As I've mentioned 1,000 times already throughout this video, I love Rags to Riches style gameplay, so let's chat a little bit about the collectible system in both games for a second. In The Sims 3, the collectible system was expanded with DLC Lake Seasons, which introduced wildflowers that could be picked, or the Pets expansion, which introduced small animals like snakes and birds that can be collected and sold. In addition to the base metals, rocks and crystals that can be found, all of the game's collectibles do make the world feel so full and enticing to explore. Hitting a rare find like a red Cosmo flower, or don't even get me started about a Tiberium crystal, feels so satisfying. Like you've actually earned it after sending your sim running about the gaff for days on end. I also love how the later packs and store content added ways for you to process your gems and metals at home so that you didn't have to wait around for the mail sim each day. In The Sims 4, collectibles don't feel as exciting. I do like how there are household collection journals so you can keep track of what you found, but I never get hella hyped about them. I can't even remember the names of most of the gems and metals, and some of you guys might have picked up just there, but I actually named the 2 tiers on my memberships here on the channel after the 2 rarest and most expensive gems in The Sims 3, those being Tiberium and Soul Piece, which right now, if you're enjoying the video so far, you might want to give it a like or even subscribe. And also, as I mentioned, we have memberships enabled for the channel here where you can get really fun perks like getting to come and hang out in exclusive streams each week, so that's down below. But anyway, as I was saying, the Crystal Creations pack did make me feel more excited to find gems in The Sims 4, as I could cut them down and use them for, you know, reducing jewelry production costs. But all in all, they just really do feel like a means to an end. Maybe it's all of this linking back to the open world of it all though. As a brief aside though, the addition of the tarot card collectible set from the Life and Death pack was very fun. You had to do quests to find certain cards or do certain actions, all of this good stuff. You get a reward at the end for completing your deck and your collection as well. I wish that it could be tied to some further gameplay though. I know that you can charge for tarot card readings, but why couldn't we unlock this little booth after completing the deck that let us set our own rates where the likelihood of a sim accepting it could be influenced by things like our traits and relationship to the sim? Cool idea. Wish it went deeper. Wish this kind of thing was executed more consistently across the games, is all I'm saying, despite my little criticism there. That's more me having wishful thinking. With that said though, one thing that The Sims 4 does go significantly harder on than The Sims 3, in my opinion, is running your own business. The Sims 3 base game and DLC don't give you much option for running home businesses in the game. You have to turn to certain store sets like the business as usual bistro, or there's a toy shop system packaged with the Midnight Hollow store world, which I admittedly do not have. But the retail systems added in The Sims 4 are pretty good, and I revisit them all the time. From being able to start from humble beginnings with a sales table in your front garden to running a retail shop, a restaurant, a vet clinic, and wait, a retail lot again? I joke, but the businesses and, as Satchon Sims like to call it, no hobbies pack did win me over with the home business system. I love the flexibility of being able to basically make any kind of commercial lot you like, even if it doesn't work flawlessly 100% of the time, as is customary with The Sims 4. Perhaps it's because of The Sims 3's open world system, which would make consistent customers an issue. The store versions of these systems in The Sims 3 just don't have the same level of depth, functionality, and customization that The Sims 4 does. Like, for real, I know I haven't been the most positive about The Sims 4 throughout this video, but here it does great. So many gold stars from me. These systems really do make me pause to consider which game I want to start my new Rags to Riches playthrough in, because I know that I miss them dearly in The Sims 3, even though there are parts of that game which, as I've already said, makes a Rags to Riches in that game feel more fun. Money making / the economy of The Sims 4 doesn't quite feel as challenging as it does in The Sims 3 either. I have really recently started a new Rags to Riches challenge in The Sims 4 in my forever world, and I got about 400 simoleons easily in one day from collecting and fishing. Again, flowers in The Sims 3 seasons does make this process a bit easier in that game, but I feel like in The Sims 3, you earn less from careers and skills in the very early game, and you get to feel like you're really in the pits with your Sims. I feel like this is also increased in The Sims 3 by the fact that most cheap kind of early game items look pretty old, pretty a little bit raggedy, you know, whereas depending on what packs you have in The Sims 4, you can really easily get some super nice and stupidly cheap build buy objects. It just doesn't give that same I'm a starving artist vibe, you know? This won't be a problem for a lot of players, but I don't know. Once you get the dragon fruit in The Sims 4, man, you're done. Money is seriously so easy to come by, and it's one of those things that sometimes I do have to hold myself back from when I see the option to acquire it laid out before me, because I know that I don't want all of the challenge evaporated straight away. And as I don't know another place to include it in this video, I will mention it here. Lot traits and, much more recently, lot challenges are a great way to increase difficulty in your game if you find your Sims getting rich and, you know, boring too fast. My favorite ones for, again, my beloved Rags to Riches style of gameplay are country living, which requires you to have all the ingredients available to cook a meal, and off the grid, which removes the power and water utilities from your lot. Again, this is another feature that I desperately wish The Sims 3 had, and I miss them a lot when I go back to that game. Now, admittedly, I'm not the biggest family player in either of these games, so my thoughts on this area of both games will not be super detailed. The structure of life stages in The Sims 4 has changed over the game's 11-year lifespan, which still makes me a little bit sick in my mouth to say. While the children of 2015 yesteryear used to sprout from a baby straight into a 10-year-old, they now go from newborn to infant to toddler to child. This is where you guys will really have to sound off in the comments, because especially when I'm playing with you guys, I'm a sucker for ignoring the babies and cheating their needs. I do like how toddlers are quite self-sufficient, but I find infants so annoying. I'm sure that the more maternal and paternal among you will really enjoy the milestone aspects, which I believe are a base game feature but way more fleshed out with growing together. But I don't really care for that kind of stuff in my own personal gameplay. Gameplay for kids has improved in The Sims 4 a lot over time, with new packs adding a lot more things for them to do. Then teenagers just look and feel like young adults who have an unpaid job to attend 5 days a week. I don't have the high school years pack, so I can't speak to how changes, you know, introduced in that pack change the experience of that life stage. I feel quite similarly about The Sims 3, but there's something more endearing about that game in terms of, you know, having kids and teens and younger Sims in your household. Like, again, watching them getting to get on the school bus each day, going on field trips and getting the notifications about the antics and what they're getting up to, and even have teens going off to prom if you have the Generations pack. Again though, I'm really not the best one to be comparing these aspects of gameplay, and there is a lot to compare here too. Depending on what packs you have, there are some systems in The Sims 4 that will flesh out the relationships between your Sims a bit more in theory. Sentiments is a base game feature, I believe, and again, it's cool in theory, but it seems to me that Sims will get sentiments way too quickly with acquaintances, and sometimes Sims will get bad moodlets with, close Sims, which is very frustrating to work with. There are also family dynamics from growing together. I do like this one as it's a lot less invasive. I feel at least it can be decent for storytelling. The Sims 3 doesn't really have any comparative systems as far as I remember, but to be honest, I have never felt any kind of absence of them. I make up the family dynamics and relationship related stories and drama in my head based on how I see my Sims interacting with each other. I don't need the game to give me a label which may be dissonant with the story that I'm already building in my head, if that makes any sense. So now I think I've hit on the core elements of gameplay in both Sims games. Life goals, skills, making money, socializing with family. There is of course a lot more to each game that have been introduced in the deluge of DLC throughout the life cycles of both games, but my script is already massive. I can't address every single point of comparison here between the gameplay systems in all of the DLC for The Sims 3 and 4, but I do want to talk about it a little bit more generally. There is a lot of variation in the volume and forms of DLC that both games offer. The Sims 3 offered 2 forms of DLC, expansion packs of which there were 11, and the far smaller stuff packs of which there were 9. Stuff packs, to my knowledge, never included any gameplay aspects, just purely cosmetic, build, buy, and CAS items. The Sims 3 also had an online store where anything from individual items to entire new worlds and gameplay sets could be purchased with a currency called Sim Points. I've briefly mentioned some of the premium content that you could get in the store throughout this video. With The Sims 4 coming up on the end of 2025, there are, hold your breath ladies and gentlemen, 20 expansion packs, 12 game packs, another 20 stuff packs, and about 45 kits. Almost 100 pieces of DLC for one game. I'm gonna again mainly be ignoring kits just because they only offer aesthetic aspects to the game for the most part. If we ignore the volume of DLC for now, I actually do like the wider variety of formats which The Sims 4 offers without having to turn your cash into another currency like you do with The Sims 3 store. Kits are great for console players who can't access CC. Stuff packs add fun, bite-sized experiences like new skills, expansion packs bring new worlds and chunkier systems, and then we hit my beloved game packs. I can't express how devastated I am still to this day by the lack of game packs and the transparency around their disappearance in recent years, with the last one for The Sims 4 being Werewolves in 2022. When they were coming out regularly, I was hardly ever, and I actually honestly, thinking about it now, have never been disappointed when I've added a new one to my game. Please bear in mind, the 2 that I don't own are Journey to Betu and My Wedding Stories. Feel like that's really important to point out there, actually. But I'd often find that I'd get equal or even more enjoyment and use out of them than I do for full-on expansions from time to time. Expansion packs have really ramped up in their release volume for The Sims 4 over the years since game packs have stopped, especially, and a lot of folk here on YouTube have been remarking how some of the newer expansions feel like game pack experiences. See Lovestruck and Enchanted by Nature for some potential examples. This inconsistency in expansion pack quality is something I have never experienced in The Sims 3. I have all of them now. I haven't my entire time that I've played The Sims 3, mind, but I have nowhere near explored what every pack has to offer. Every new expansion feels like a delight, and each pack has a clear vision, and that the team went above and beyond to execute on that vision. In my mind, the contrasting volume of DLC for The Sims 4 has some benefits and drawbacks. One benefit is that it of course does give players a lot more option and variety. You know, there's always the narrative of you can pick what you want and leave what you don't. But a further benefit is that the amount of time that Maxis has had to make new content for The Sims 4 has both given them the room and the freedom to innovate with new ideas. Life and Death felt like such a fresh pack and struck a great balance between attending the needs of players who love supernatural vibes and those who aren't as much of a fan of that style of gameplay. Spa Day is such a random pack idea, but it has been on my top 5 DLC for The Sims 4, and I would really hate it if it magically disappeared from my game. I don't know if this player exists, but I'm sure that someone was really happy about Journey to Batu. But then a drawback of this is in how, if you do have a lot of Sims 4 DLC, and I know that some of you guys love to collect it, your game gets overwhelming as hell. There are so many festivals cluttering up your calendar, you get notifications relating to gameplay that you're not focusing on at the time, and oh my goodness, your Simology panel and general Sim UI can get so unwieldy. I saw a tweet recently, I believe it was from a cotton sock, who noted how The Sims 4 feels so overwhelming if you are just now dropping back into it after not playing for a while, and it made me feel how much we're really like boiled frogs with this game if you've been playing since the beginning. With The Sims 3 though, each expansion pack does stay in its lane. Apart from the teleporter popping in at the start of a new save file, I don't get random Sims with the wish to travel to the future every 5 minutes. Only for those who, you know, the Sims that would be relevant to with a high logic skill or something like that. I don't get notifications every 10 minutes saying that, oh look, a new festival is happening in the future, you should go check it out. The jigsaw just feels way more coherent in a way that I can't fully describe. Again, is this because of the fact that, you know, the pet related activities are kept to the pet world and all of the celebrity stuff is kept to the celebrity world, and the boundaries of the game don't allow me to travel to every world all at once? I feel like this is a question which we really do keep coming back to in this video. A second downside of the volume of Sims 4 DLC is in how there are now quite a few packs with similar theming. Take Outdoor Retreat and The Latest Adventure Awaits, or Parenthood and Growing Together. Not to mention that social media in its various vague formats have been added to the game about 3 different times. The game has been out for so long that it's now standing on its own tail. We then have the issue of The Sims 4 treading old ground which Sims 3 packs have covered. This is of course naturally going to happen. We want seasons in every world, we want pets in every game, I mean, you know, we want these similar things being brought back. One would hope that a team with this much funding behind them could continue to positively iterate on previous projects, but instead I see shrinkflation and segmentation in many areas. The biggest issue that I have with DLC and The Sims 4, and I'm not the only one who feels this way, is the general process of the Sims team giving us a pack which we've seen in a previous game, like seasons, like, you know, pets, like university-centered packs, but then cutting half the content that we got from the previous iteration. The most glaring example of this, in my opinion, can be seen with the kind of tropical getaway packs, which in The Sims 3 is Island Paradise and Island Living, and The Sims 4. You can just tell that the budget for Island Living mainly went into the world of Sulani, which does look beautiful. Full transparency here, I don't own this pack, but you know, I have seen a lot of it throughout my time on YouTube and all that good stuff. However, while this pack introduces some similar features to the Island Paradise expansion of The Sims 3, they seem to be so shallow and cut back. Take snorkeling and scuba diving, for example, which were full skills in Sims 3. You could go to diving spots in the deep ocean once your level was high enough, then go to these underwater areas to pick collectibles from small sea creatures to shells, and even finding treasure chests. You could even get beaten up by sharks and see mermaids down there too. In The Sims 4, however, snorkeling and scuba diving have been tied to the fitness skill, I believe, and there are none of those fun underwater areas to explore anymore, with them simply being reduced to rabbit hole locations. Speaking of mermaids and other supernatural occult, packs introduced with The Sims 4, like vampires and Realm of Magic, these occults have great progression and leveling systems, which means that you can make each sim feel fairly different. Mermaids from Island Living have nothing like that. You just have all the powers and they're the same as every other mermaid on the island, but we'll swing back to stuff like this in a second. Aside from that, Island Living did not bring back the resort system from The Sims 3, which was pretty disappointing to me, as I've, had a lot of fun playing with that in the past. With the retail mechanics introduced with other packs already, which we talked about previously, I can't get my head around why this didn't make a return. I probably should have brought this up earlier, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm expecting the exact same replica of, these packs in every single game. But when the previous iteration was packed to the brim with the amazing content, they set up an expectation, and I don't think it's a stretch to want the same level, again, if not more content, in the newest iteration of a pack or game. Then there's pack content segmentation. In The Sims 3, the Pets expansion pack brought cats, dogs, horses, and even small critters like birds and snakes to the game. To get a similar level of content for The Sims 4, you'd have to get cats and dogs, horse ranch, and my first pet stuff. Even then, you don't get to control the pets yourself or get unicorns. So this, in my opinion, is an example where pack content segmentation really hurt The Sims 4, but one area where it benefited most is occults, as I just alluded to a second ago. Me from 5 years ago simply would have been mouth agape at this statement, but now I do appreciate how separating out supernaturals into their own packs rather than cramming them all into one like Sims 3 Supernatural did has made the individual experience better. Each supernatural has a dedicated skill tree, again, filled with unique powers, has their dedicated worlds, etc. I do despise how whatever back-end smiting of the game pack team went down meant that fairies had to be stretched into a full expansion with some extra uninspiring gubbins sprinkled in there to justify the break from tradition though. So with that said, I want to really quickly discuss how DLC impacts the feel of each Sims game. What I found from The Sims 4 is that every new pack that comes out that I'm interested in, I'll buy, when it goes on sale, or more recently, I buy it to play with you guys straight away. Then I'll play it for a few days, again, either on stream with you guys or in my own personal time. Then I'll just get back to my own regular gameplay in the households that I'm attached to. Maybe it's just my attention span, but over the last few years, I've gotten into a terrible habit of buying a new pack and not even fully exploring it because the content just isn't captivating enough, or alternatively, the mechanics just don't work very well and the frustration gets the better of me. I think the expansions from The Sims 3 did a far better job at implementing new gameplay features, which just seem to blend into the base game really well. There are so many little aspects added through expansions that sometimes it can be difficult to remember which one came from where, and I think that's a really good thing. So what does this have to do with the player experience? Expansion packs in The Sims 3, for me, create, for the most part, a really cohesive feeling game. One which feels like one really big game that I can get sucked into, rather than the feeling that I sometimes get with The Sims 4. That being that it feels like, and hang with me here, that it feels like I'm drifting through space trying to enjoy my game, but it keeps pelting me with these tiny asteroids of stuff that I don't care about right now. I know I've said this in my streams before, but you could make a great drinking game out of the invasive life and death pop-ups, honestly. So then, we are coming up on a nearly 9,000 word script for this video, so I'd better start wrapping things up. If we had to come to a conclusion on which game is best for you and which one you might want to put money into DLC-wise, I think there are a few things to consider here. Firstly, what are you playing on? Less powerful laptops and PCs definitely benefit from The Sims 4, but with some tuning mods and minimal DLC and custom content, I think The Sims 3 can run on lower powered machines mostly fine nowadays, especially especially bringing it full circle right here with that patch that came out at the start of the year. Be aware too that The Sims 3 generally has pretty long loading times when you boot up the game or, you want to save, unlike The Sims 4, but conversely, it doesn't have loading screens every time you want to go to a new lot. So once again, swings and roundabouts. And secondly, you should really consider the style of gameplay that you prefer. I know that I have dogged on The Sims 4 a fair whack this video, but these are feelings that I've had for a while. And again, I found a playstyle that has made me fall back in love with this game, despite the flaws that I perceive in it. I love and adore my forever world, and I will be crushed if anything ever happens to it. Streaming and playing the game with you guys has taught me to embrace the silly, goofy quirks of the game, bugs and all. Some of the batshit crazy stuff that has happened in my forever world would never happen in The Sims 3, and I wanted to note this because we can be critical about something that we love because we love it and we want it to be better. Now that I have discovered my Forever World playstyle, my approach to both games is fundamentally different and scratches different itches. I love The Sims 3 so dearly, but also playing for a few generations in a save file can cause performance issues to the point of unplayability that gets my back up endlessly and fiercely. The save file where I made, the most memorable stories, I had the best Sims in The Sims 3, after about 3 or 4 generations, got to the point where I couldn't play it anymore because it was absolutely chugging. I know that this isn't the case for every single player though, and I know that it's just a classic sign of the passage of time when it comes to trying to play these older games like The Sims 3. But with that said, if you're a rotational player, The Sims 4 has you covered, whereas single household legacy players, I think would love The Sims 3 a lot more. While me from a year ago would have hands down said that Sims 3 was the better title out of the two, Yasmin from 2025 can't be as brazen with a decision. Again, with starting my forever world, I have found an entirely new appreciation and love for The Sims 4, even if I still think that it has a lot of issues. And I know that I'm picking out a lot of these issues because I love The Sims 3 so much as well. So while I've somewhat attempted to answer this long-standing question within the Sims community of which game is better, I think it's pretty impossible to definitively and unanimously come to a decision, because ultimately everybody has their own opinions, their own ties with nostalgia, their own preferred playstyles, their own aesthetic preferences as well. Some will be diehard for The Sims 4, others will be diehard for The Sims 3. Despite this video's lack of a definitive conclusion, I hope that you have found it useful, and if not, then maybe just relaxing or entertaining. Once again, if there's anything I miss or that you disagree with, feel free to put it in the comments down below because I would love to hear from you. Before we round out this video, I have to give a huge thank you to my amazing channel members for supporting my work here. So starting off with our Tiberium level members, we have Amy M, Bloodied Porcelain, and Vanagander, and you're going to be able to see all of our amazing Soul Piece members on the screen here too. Again, you guys, I say this every video, I love you guys all so much. You are seriously so great. But once again, my question of the day has been, let us know which game you think is better in the comments down below and why. If you want to hear me yap on for a little while longer, YouTube has picked out the video on the screen just for you. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.